Morning, everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Friday, the 14th of October. I'm Derek Clark and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good, Derek. Not my fault we're late today, is it? It normally is, but today...
It's not, and as Aldo says, late as per Dale. Yeah, I apologise. That is my fault this morning, folks. So I'm happy to take the fine on this one. But we're here now, and we're here to talk all things Rangers. And there's loads to talk about as ever when it comes to the club. Of course, we will look ahead to Sunday's game against Motherwell as Rangers look to get back on the horse. But there's so much fallout from the debacle at Ibrox on Wednesday. Losing the track of days here. Joshua, you were there for us. Now we had Stevie Clifford on yesterday. Stevie was absolutely fantastic. He was hurting like many of the supporters. There's no doubt about it. You were at Ibrox watching the match unfold. What was your take on it, having slept on it a couple of nights now? What's your feeling of what you saw there?
Yeah, we watched it back yesterday, the game, to just try and, I guess, get a better perspective on it, because when something like that happens in the stadium, and it's the contrast of emotions, because for the first half it really did feel like, Ibrox was going to do it again. This group of players were going to do it again. It was a good performance, and they kept Liverpool at arm's length. The second half, I think it's twofold. There's definitely, firstly, the mental fragility aspect that you can't deny when it's happened in two Old Firm games. That's a similar collapse to the first half at Ajax that was only kind of rectified by going and just sitting in and restricting space. The difference between the Ajax game and the Liverpool game is that 3 attacking substitutions were made. The midfield was completely open. And the goal that sums it up for me, probably the whole of the second half, we had it on the website yesterday in our analysis piece, is Darwin Nunez's goal, which I think was the third goal. Rangers looked to play over the press, and everyone here will know we've talked about that a lot. Van Bronckhorst likes to do it. Worked at Hearts, for example, did it against Leipzig last year, did it in the 1-1 draw at Parkhead using Alan McGregor's distribution to the best of its ability. But in the second half, it just failed completely. I think McGregor's pass accuracy was something like 54% over the whole game, which in itself isn't a terrible thing, because a lot of the time he was going long anyway. But I think the stat is in the piece, not one of his passes over the halfway line found their target. And the reason that's important is because you see for the third goal, the ball's played straight into Fabinho. He can run up the pitch, and Liverpool can score into space. The manager said that short passes were one of the issues, and Scott Arfield lost the ball a couple of times for goals. But I think it was Rangers' inability to keep the ball more widely, because every pass is a risk, Derek. Again, as we were saying, I think yesterday, the day before, if you're going to try and play it around the back and break the opposition press, that's a risk. But if you're going to kick the ball at the pitch and put it up for a contested duel, when your team's so high and wide as Rangers were, that's a risk as well. So I think they were just picked apart far too easily. And then there wasn't for whatever reason, when it went to 5-1, there wasn't the ability to just, put everyone back and go for damage limitation. It just seemed like they were almost numb for that kind of Salah hat-trick, that 7 minutes, and just existing through it. And the reality is, when that happens, the difference between a 3-1 defeat, if Nunez's goal was the last goal, is so different to obviously what it turned out to be. And yes, you can say Salah, Thiago and Jota came on. That's true, but they were all playing at Anfield the week before. They started at Anfield the week before. Salah didn't get much of a sniff apart from his penalty then. So I think that takes away Rangers' responsibility in it, for me, that excuse. So really hard to come back from a game like that, as I say, not only because of everything that went wrong on the pitch, but that inability to stem the tide and concede so regularly, I think is very damning for any team.
Yeah, what concerns me, Joshua, when it did go 3-1, I was thinking this could end up 6 or 7 at that point. And that is a concern because, and Stevie touched on it yesterday, and as John Donaldson points out here, running about like headless chickens. That was a point at 3-1, you would say, or even 4-1. Shut up shop. Liverpool make those substitutions, like you say, Joshua. Salah, Thiago comes on, Andy Robertson comes on. The Rangers substitutions, of course, are attacking like for like. The game's dead by that point, and it's all about shutting up shop and taking your beating. But yeah, it unravelled somewhat, and it's the heaviest Ibrox defeat, I think, in Rangers history, which is grim reading. Now, fallout from the game. Connor Goldson is out injured. It looks like a thigh tear. He was on crutches. I think we've seen just how much Rangers miss him. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't end up 7-1, but I thought he had the measure of Nunez before he went off injured, and nothing against Leon King. What a baptism of fire that was. I know he played at Anfield, but it's asking a lot of him and Ben Davies now, who people are actually commenting in any news on Ben Davies from Stephen Gillespie. Not as yet, Stephen. We are speaking to the manager tomorrow morning, and we'll get an injury update as to the duration of Connor Goldson's injury. Ryan Jack, of course, who hobbled off, and of course Ben Davies, who had an injury complaint. He was to be assessed, so fingers crossed that is okay. That was he played the duration of the game, Joshua. That's the thing. He's been getting taken off 60 minutes, I think, against St Mirren at the weekend. He's just been building up his fitness, but the fact he's stayed on the park looks like that's had an impact on his fitness, and we just hope that he is okay. Is going forward, because that would leave Rangers with just one fit centre half. Now, I know James Sands can play at the back, but he's predominantly a defensive midfielder. That is worrying, I have to say, because Connor Goldson, for me, looks like it could be, and we've seen early reports suggesting that could be months.
Yeah, I was just putting there in the what's it called? The description, Derek, the match analysis, pardon me, if anyone wants to read that, and a piece we've done this morning about Goldson. It looked bad because, firstly, Goldson never goes off. Can't remember the last time that he did go off.
No, I don't think he's ever went off. I was trying to rack my brains as well. I don't think he's ever been subbed in a game or went off. I don't think he's ever been injured.
Well, if anyone can remember a time where Connor Goldson has come off, please do put it in the comments. But he looked in pain when he went down, didn't he? Initially, I thought he maybe went over an ankle or just whatever. But when you see him clutching his I think there was his left thigh coming off. And yeah, of course, it's not just correlation doesn't equal causation, and I can never get my sayings right there, but. It might not have been 6 goals. It might have been 6 goals with Goldson. I don't think it would have been. I think you've seen just how much he was missed at the back, and that's not a slight on Leon King, because I think he was very, very unprotected by his midfield, as we've just spoken about, because of the way that Rangers set up to go long. But I think if Goldson is out, a lot of people in the past have maybe not warmed to him completely, and this will be a good time for them to maybe reevaluate their opinion, shall we say, because he's not enjoyed the best start to the season. I thought against St Mirren, it was one of his best performances of the season. We're speaking about that at the weekend, the fact that he was up against a strike partnership, had to come into the midfield a lot. The same against Nunez, and the way that Van Bronckhorst wants to defend with those defenders, kind of man marking players all over the pitch. It's not easy, but Goldson, up until the point of his injury, as you say, Derek, I think he was winning that duel. So how do Rangers cope without him if he's out for a while? How many games you got now until the World Cup? 9, 10. It's a lot of football to be played. Sands had some good games for me at the back. I think he looked a little bit exposed, a couple of long balls, which maybe showed, as you said, that his natural inclination isn't always as a centre-back. It's maybe as a midfielder. And Ben Davies, for me, I thought his left foot, there's a few balls he played over the top where you could really see the class that he'll bring on the ball. So fingers crossed, if he is suffering an injury, it's nothing too serious. But life without Connor Goldson, games without Connor Goldson is kind of a step into the unknown for Rangers, because what was the last time they had a sustained period without him? Missed one game last season, but before that, you're going back to the end. Was it his first season around Christmas time? I seem to remember that he was out, or maybe just before. It's been a while anyway. He's hardly missed any football.
Yeah. I don't think he's missed under a handful of games, but I think that's cup matches where they're playing lower league opposition. But yeah, he's not one that misses games. That's what's concerning to me, because it has to be something really serious for him to have to go off. So I really hope that he's okay. Lots of comments coming in here. I need to. Denzel says, windswept today, Derek. Getting a lot of comments from the here. I've not brushed it this morning. It's a bit windy down here in Warrington Way, so that's my excuse. Anyway.
Wait till they see Johnny's new haircut, Derek.
Wow, yeah. It's very Mark Lamar-esque, I've got to say. Or as Bob Mortimer used to call him, a 1950s greaseball. So you're looking forward to seeing Johnny on with his new hairdo. So you can all have a good old chuckle at that one. Now, James Tavernier's come out yesterday, Joshua. We're told that he never came out and spoke post-match because he was called for a UEFA doping test at the final whistle and was denied the opportunity to front up to the public. However, he's now given an interview. Now, I'm going to read the main points of this, folks. He says, we obviously apologise. We never want to lose to that kind of scoreline to anybody, no matter what team it is. We have worked so hard to get to this point. You see the away game, it was 2-0, but we had a chance down there and limited them to 2 set pieces. But to concede 7 at home in front of your own fans is never good enough. You never want to see that. Obviously, you can take the positives out of the first 45, and then it's 55 minutes before they score again. But it's the Champions League. We are proud to be competing with these teams, but we need to work hard and look at the things we have done wrong going forward. Never once would I look at any teammate in my team and know that they'd chuck in the towel. It's simple. Liverpool made 3 substitutions in Jota, Salah and Thiago, all world-class players, and they caught us trying to play football in the wrong areas. They capitalised on it, and that's the difference. They are world-class players, and if you give them a chance or a sniff, 8 times out of 10, they have a chance of taking it. That's what they did. What do you make of that, Joshua? James Tavernier coming out last night with that statement. I think he's not wrong. I think there's a lot of anger amongst the supporters right now, and listen, talk is cheap, but they need to come out and put in a performance at Fir Park on Sunday. What do you make of it?
It's rhetoric, isn't it? It's just football cliches, and I think people don't communicate with that. Sorry, they don't like that type of communication because it is cliches, and I'm sure that James Tavernier is hurting. Absolutely, regardless of whether he had a bad performance or not. I think the proof will be in the fact that this Rangers team don't suffer a defeat like that again, because too often this year, how many times you're talking about? 4 times this season, they've had a real crisis moment on the pitch. Both Old Firm games. The first half in Ajax, yes, they have a lot of quality, but to concede so many goals in quick succession. Obviously, the second half on Wednesday, the proof is in the fact that won't happen again. I think sound bites after. I think it's better to come out and say something and the club to communicate something than not. But if you think that's going to really appease people much after they've just seen the team get beat 7-1, Proof will be in if it doesn't happen again, Derek. I think that's what I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Now this is an interesting one from Cliff. Josh, I want to pose this to you. Tav is carrying an injury now. I think the manager did say this. Was it after Ajax?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure, but he is nowhere near the Tavernier of last season. He was poor in possession. I think he was probably, he is at fault, I would say, for goal number 1. I know that the corner comes in at the near post, but he gives the ball away initially in the build-up to it that leads to the corner. It just looks like he's carrying an injury to me. He doesn't look 100% fit. Where do you stand on that, having watched him at close up?
Well, he's obviously just played. It's like Goldson. He's played so much football, does it naturally just catch up on you at some point? He was carrying an injury after Ajax. I think the game after that, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but the manager seemed to say that it was the weekend after, actually, wasn't it? In the end, the manager seemed to say that had given him sufficient time to get over it.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been at his best, but we've actually got a really good piece coming tomorrow from Football Stuart, who some of you'll know on Twitter, that has a really good breakdown of some of the issues on the right and the left hand side, and maybe give some context as to why a player like Ryan Kent's been struggling and some of the kind of systemic issues that Rangers have suffered this season. We've obviously seen Tavernier play a slightly different role in the last week, but he's not been at his best. His best is a very high bar. He's also had games where he's been a little bit more hearts away, for example. He's not given that attacking freedom because of the way that Rangers approach the game. I think playing with Sakala ahead of him will change his role somewhat, as we've seen last week against St Mirren as well. But Rangers, as we said a lot of times, Derek, Rangers have not. They've had someone like Antonio Cholak who's performing well and above expectation. Aside from that, they've not really had many players who have been in their best vein of form. It struck me on Wednesday night the difference between Ryan Kent now and last season. Last season, when all these teams came to Ibrox, every time he got the ball, there was such anticipation for what he could do. And I just don't think that's been there this season. As simple as it is to say that, when you compare and contrast, that Rangers team on Wednesday is effectively the same team as last year, but in my opinion weaker, because you've not got someone like Joe Rebo who's really integral, and Calvin Bassey, who, just look at the final, how many times he kept his side in the game with those recovery runs with his 1v1 defending. Yes, I understand. Cholak's different because of the league. Completely understand that. But if you talk about strengthening for the Champions League, can you say you've strengthened when the group and your chances in the group have elapsed by the time that players like Yilmaz and Matondo start making an impact? And the money that's been spent there, when you look at the middle of the park and you look at the fact you're bringing on 38 or 37-year-old Stephen Davis as an attacking number 8, I think that deserves criticism as well. So yeah. Tavernier maybe not his best. I don't think he's alone in that, Derek. But Fir Park, Motherwell away is tended to bring out good performances in the last few seasons, hasn't it? In particular from Sakala.
Yeah, the thing is with Tavernier, I think it was at this point last season where he was out of form also, and there was calls for Nathan Patterson to come into the side, and he did turn around the season. He ended up having a fantastic campaign, leading the club to that final. Mark says we've got no backup to Tav after sending the Polish lad away. There is Adam Devine, folks, of course, just signed a new deal last week, so the club obviously think highly of him, and he has played a handful of games for Tavernier, usual cup games, and of course at the tail end of last season, he was part of that team that had that great victory at Tynecastle. I would have no qualms about seeing Adam Devine start on Sunday or going forward. I think he's a right talent, Joshua.
Yeah, no, he is. I don't think he'll start at the weekend. I think his pathway is probably very much further down the line with Tavernier. I haven't signed a new contract. I just seen a comment there about Patterson, Bassey, and Aribo.
Yeah.
One thing that stands out from them as well, Patterson, Bassey, Aribo, they're all powerful players now down in the Premier League who, in a game like that, can keep up and dominate and compete.
Yeah,
when you look at that Rangers team in the second half and some of the, in the middle of the park in particular,
brushed off the ball too easily.
You need at this level, you obviously just need to, maybe players that are in their peak, that are athletes. And again, it's similar to the Napoli game. When you're playing that starting 11, you look at it and you think, what is the long-term future of that? The Napoli game, what was the long-term future of a Davis Arfield and Jack midfield? And I think that's one of the issues at the moment is if results aren't good, if you have humiliating experiences for people going to the game like they did on Wednesday, I don't think there's the thing to hold on to that they can trust. Okay, we know this is what's going to happen because we can see these players are going to come through, or this is what the structure is, or to buy into, or as I say, the long-term vision of this team. Whereas last season, although you could make a similar argument, Rangers were getting these results in Europe and it was working, but when it doesn't work, it exposes everything, and that's just, I think, the situation that we find ourselves in on this Friday morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of good comments coming in. I wanted to pose to you, Josh, and this is an interesting one. Andy Mitchell says, good morning, lads, from Patworth, Everard in Cambridgeshire. Because of the injuries, do you think Gers will dip into the free market for a defender? I would be tempted to do so. I've got to say, I had a wee look at the transfer market free agent list yesterday, Joshua. There's one player that stands out, and he has been linked over the last couple of weeks. I've no idea what his fitness is like, and if an approach has already been made. I would take Gary Cahill in a heartbeat right now because Rangers need a centre-half, and he is a centre-half.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the thing with, when you look at it now, signing a player like Suter, who's so injury prone, when you already had Helander, and you presume that maybe they couldn't move Helander on because of, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Yeah, exactly. But to then bring another player in who has a high likelihood of being injured does not seem like a wise move. And then Davies, I don't think he was injury prone before coming to Rangers from my memory, but he's obviously picked up a few niggles. Maybe that's as well because he hasn't played that much over the last year, and that comes into it. And then you have the complete unseen circumstance of Connor Goldson getting injured. So there is some exceptions to it, but when you already have two players in that position that are injury prone, you almost take yourself down to 4 guaranteed players in that position, or 3 guaranteed players if you're counting James Sands. If you're not counting James Sands, kind of as a presupposition. So if it is Sands and King, that's not the centre half pairing that I think many would have expected at the start of the season. I think Leon King largely, that second half, I don't think should really define them at all, because, as I say, he's the young player in that team, the 18-year-old coming in, who I think suffered a lot of lack of protection from his midfield. Maybe Rangers will compensate in other areas, go a little bit more defensive next to Lundstrom. Lundstrom's also played in, obviously, at centre-back, but I think the only time he's played in the back two was that Motherwell game, which obviously didn't end well, and the consistent argument with, if you drop Lundstrom back, you lack him in the middle.
I remember it well, yeah.
So, yeah, it'll be intriguing to see what happens on Sunday. Then you've got Dundee, and I can't remember who Rangers have the weekend after, but it's a must win on Sunday. And again, as we've said so many times this season, Derek, there needs to be the performance attached to that, so that there's some enjoyment and excitement, because otherwise the frustration, which will continue to fester anyway, will just, I think, be even more magnified.
Yeah, Paul McGarrigle makes a good point. I never realised he was a free agent. Paul says, Derek, Mangala is still free. Massive Champions League experience. Get him in. If he's a free agent, get him in now. Of course, former Man City player, France international. Listen, I hope Ross Wilson's on the blow to him and get him in today. Scott Swelder says, I like this point, club should appoint John Brown as a dressing room ambassador to give motivation before every match. Well, that will certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons if John Brown walked in there. I think certainly a lot of supporters wouldn't be opposed to that idea. Simple Simon had a pie. Richard Gough is on a free.
He'll fit enough.
He keeps himself fit right enough. You always see him posting pictures. I think he's on Instagram or what have you. Doing triathlons and all that, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, I would not be opposed to that either. Lots of other comments coming in. I'll get to as many of them as possible. The Yilmaz thing you touched on, Joshua, you mentioned we've got the piece coming out tomorrow, which is a great tactical insight into why it might be the time for Ridvan to get the nod. I think Rangers... It's all right in hindsight, but I think you could have. I think it could have been a better option than Barisic at some point on Wednesday night. And I think there comes a point in time where you need to put this lad in, sink or swim sort of thing. Rangers on that left-hand side now. I know Barisic has done okay, but I think it's time now for Ridvan Yilmaz to come into the side, because that left-hand flank for Rangers is a problem. Ryan Kent is not in form. And Yilmaz is someone who likes to bomb forward. He could provide Rangers that attacking impetus down that left-hand side.
Yeah, agreed. It's a really good piece, and I'd encourage everyone to read it. I think it's going out on Saturday, so tomorrow morning. And it breaks down lots of different things, one of which is the fact that if you think of the Rangers team at home to St Mirren, Antonio Cholak naturally drifts towards the right-hand side. Borna Barisic is a fullback, very much in the Steven Gerrard mould, who at times you've seen his role change under Van Bronckhorst, become a third centre-back at times. But what he doesn't do very well is that even more modern fullback role, which is impact the game inside the pitch, come in and play as almost an extra central midfielder. And what Stuart does is just actually really kind of succinctly break down the benefits of that, why that Barisic is impacting Kent, why the lack of a player at number 10 on that side, i.e. a Tillman or a Lawrence who can take the ball into feet and turn, makes the left-hand side look so stale and ineffective. Whereas on the right, it's not like it's been totally fluid, but at the weekend, it's a good example. It's on my Twitter page. Sakala for the third goal, he runs inside, he gets the ball by the touchline, or it might be the fourth goal. No, it's the third goal. Ryan Jack is totally uninvolved, but his movement takes a player away. Rangers have 4 players out there. They can match up with St Mirren, and that allows Cholette to get the run. On the other side, that's just not replicated at all. And Yilmaz defensively, obviously his size, I think, will be an issue and will be a concern, until it's proven otherwise. I think that's fair enough for people to have reservations about that in the Scottish game. No?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I'm not having that. I'm sorry. Look at Lisandro Martinez down at Man United. I know he had a bit of an issue coming in at Brentford and playing balls on top of his head, but Man United have more ball than most teams in the English Premier League. Rangers dominate the ball more than most teams in the Premier League. It's not often they're going to come up against a team that's going to put them under the cosh for large spells in games. So yeah, I know where that argument comes from, but you knew his size before you signed him. For me, he offers a lot more than his physicality and his height. So I just want to see him, and the team spent a lot of money on him. I just want to see him get a run of games.
I agree, and on this comment, does Gio like to shackle his right back and left back? I think he likes to play them in different roles. So if you again look at Tavernier, we've got a piece on the website, William, that kind of breaks this down. They're not the width of the team anymore. Normally, that's, especially now with the last couple of weeks, that's the wingers who are going to play the widest, and the fullbacks can impact the game still in attacking ways, but maybe through coming inside the pitch more. And if you've still got Tavernier and Barisic, Tavernier I think can do that different role and adapt and play inside the pitch. I don't think Barisic can in the same way. Barisic, how many times do you see him get the ball and turn back on himself? He's not got the confidence or the options to play balls quickly into the feet of the striker or go forward, so moves often break down there. Can you imagine if you had a player in that position who, possession-wise, and that's such an important thing now.
Break the lines.
Yeah, break the lines. It's not only breaking down the defence, but you've got to get there. It's not as if every team comes to Ibrox or away from home Motherwell, they're just going to camp around their box like Livingston did, for example, on the open day of the season after they went ahead. It's about trying to get into the final third, obviously create space, have off-ball movement that creates space for players to make runs into. And I think if you have a player in that position who can make more of a positive contribution in possession, that's the argument that Stuart makes and why it could be quite impactful. The thing about Gio is, how many players have you seen him bomb out almost completely of the squad and then come back in? Sakala is a great example.
Yeah.
Happened with Lundstrom at the start. It's happened with Stephen Davis as well. James Sands at the start of the season, and now he wasn't coming on at centre half. Ben Davies wasn't coming on at centre half a couple of weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? That it's hard to draw consistent lines or consistent threads of who his favoured personnel are.
Yeah.
What that means, though, is I don't see how he can't give Ridvan a chance, even if he has had a little bit of a difficult start, as he admitted to his move over, because I think Rangers need it on the left-hand side.
Yeah, some more interesting comments come in. One that I want to pose this to you, Joshua. You were at the B team game on Wednesday. The team put up a good fight against Liverpool, losing by 4-3. An absolute thriller there. Jim McCarroll gets in touch. Josh, did any of the B team the other day impressed? He says he watched the game on TV, liked the look of Lovelace, but maybe not ready yet for the first team.
Lovelace, I think he's still 16, so maybe not, but you can see, in my opinion, that he will be. They've been playing him off the left, almost as an inverted left winger. Rangers, I don't know if that's his best position. Definitely the B team level, there's an intention to sometimes play players in different positions, so they're not just restricted to one area when they go up into the first team, which I think is definitely a good thing. But Lovelace was the standout. Lindsay, I thought, had a good game, as did Lyle, who scored a brilliant goal. who also scored a goal. There's not many that jump out and you think they're ready to make an impact now in the first team. I think that also comes into the fact that a lot of these players are, especially the under-19s game on Wednesday, a lot of these players are 16 and 17. But Lovelace, absolutely, I think he'll be someone that you will see in the Ibrox first team in the not too distant future. He has the physicality to match. Even though he's young, he's obviously played for the Millwall first team, so he must have a mature enough head to do that. You always get that impression when you speak to him, and they did put up a good fight. They were disappointed to lose a far improved performance from the week before when it was a bit of a non-event down in Liverpool, Derek.
Yeah, but we may see one or two of them in the cup game against Dundee next week, I'd imagine. Let's see some other points coming in here. Brian Waters says, anyone know what's happening with Hadji? That the last time I got an update on Hadji was pre-season, Brian, and Van Bronckhorst said it would be after the World Cup before we see him. So I think you're talking January at least. At best, sorry, before we see him. CGM55 says, do we think Roof and Lowry will feature on Sunday? Doubt it, but they both should start against Dundee. Dave McCallum told me that Lowry is close to a comeback. They are liaising with the first team to see what the best course of action is for him. And I'd imagine he'll start playing B-team fixtures before being thrust into the first team. But Dundee could be a possibility. Motherwell, I think, comes too soon. Kamar Roof's an interesting one, Joshua. That would be the old cliche, like a new signing. If he was to come back in, albeit how long for, because we know he is injury prone. Rangers need a lift, and that would certainly give supporters a bit of a lift if we could see him back in the matchday squad again.
Yeah, but again, we're in dangerous territory when it's mid-October and you're saying Kemar Roof's going to be like a new signing after.
I know.
I think you need the new. I think you need the new signings to come back in. Tillman to be able to replicate the form that he showed early in the season. Does he have the off-ball stuff to add to that? Obviously, we've not seen him in a while, but that's not unusual, as I've just outlined with Van Bronckhorst, for players to drop in and drop out quite quickly of the first team. But the first few home games of the season, obviously the PSV game, I thought he had some brilliant performances. Matondo, I think we need these players who have been brought in the summer to make an impact. Yilmaz, that's where the freshness needs to come from. If Rangers continue to look back, and Balogun's a great example of that. Yes, it's all very well now with 4 injuries to say Rangers should have kept him. I thought, as Johnny outlined in his piece last week really well, Leon King wouldn't have got these opportunities if you need to clear the pathway as well for young players. You can't have both sides of the coin. You can't always keep your older experienced players and stockpile them and also create a pathway for young promising players. So for me, you need these. Sakal's a good example of someone who brought a lift last week and I think will continue on the right wing for the foreseeable future, certainly domestically. The way to appease, I think, in situations like this, you've got to have continuity, but you've also got to go and attack and put on good, exciting performances. Hopefully that starts with Motherwell. But I wrote in my piece on after the game on Wednesday, the damage of a result like this will do, or is more than the goal difference. It's more than just what happens in the short term. It's the scar tissue that comes from it. It's the frustration that will be so great from a defeat like that. And so I think regardless, Derek, the next few games aren't going to make everything rosy for this group of players again, regardless of who comes in. But certain things, obviously, I think can help increase the goodwill.
Yeah, Sonny says, I've got a bad feeling about Sunday. Your confidence is shattered. Motherwell on ascendancy. Listen, it's not going to be easy. It's their cup final over at Fir Park. We know how difficult it's going to be. But Rangers need to turn up. Generally, after these European matches, they put in a performance. But like you, Joshua, that the manner of the defeat on Wednesday night, I just fear that that's going to have an impact. But let's hope not, and Rangers can get a crucial 3 points on the road there. Okay, folks, I think that'll do us there. Thanks to everyone for getting in touch with the programme. As ever, it's very much appreciated. Just a reminder, a little ticker below, we've got that tremendous offer on the site, just £1 for 2 months worth of content. So much stuff on there just now. Great tactical pieces on there to keep me amused. And like we said, there's going to be a terrific tactical analysis piece tomorrow on Rangers' left-hand side and an argument why Rid van Yilmaz deserves a shot at left back. We'll be back again on, in fact, the press conference is tomorrow, so all the fallout from that will be on the site and on our YouTube channel, so stay tuned for that. And then Fir Park on Sunday. We'll have all the fallout from that as well before returning on Monday. So until then, enjoy your Friday and your weekend, and hopefully your team wins.